A sheriff's deputy loses his job. Another deputy is suspended. And it all starts with a man sitting inside an ambulance during a mental health crisis. At first, the official story sounds straightforward. Deputies respond to assist paramedics. A patient becomes combative. Force is used. End of story. But then the footage comes out. And suddenly, the entire narrative begins to crack. Because according to the official explanation, deputies were simply responding to a difficult situation. But according to the video, the people involved are saying things that raise serious questions about whether this situation should have happened at all. A family calls for help. A man in crisis ends up tased and restrained. A deputy gets fired. And the footage leaves the public asking one question. How did it get this far? On April 1, 2026, Donald Bellows' family contacted the Benton County Sheriff's Office in Missouri. According to the recording discussed in the public reporting, the family was concerned about Donald's mental state. They believed he was unstable, alone, and possibly under the influence of drugs. Earlier that day, the family had reportedly secured a 96-hour emergency mental health hold. But according to the information available, that paperwork had not yet reached Benton County authorities. Now here is where the first conflict appears. According to the official response, deputies initially declined to intervene because being a danger to yourself is not a crime. But according to the family, they were desperately trying to get help for someone they believed was in crisis. Hours later, the family calls again. This time, Donald is reportedly drifting in and out of consciousness inside a camper. EMS is dispatched. Deputies are requested to respond as backup. And this is where the camera begins telling the story. According to the footage, deputies arrive and immediately begin discussing the earlier call. One deputy explains that the family had reported serious concerns. Another conversation focuses on whether law enforcement even needed to be there. At this point, Donald appears disoriented. Paramedics attempt to assess him. They ask questions. They try to determine what he may have taken. The atmosphere is tense, but relatively controlled. According to the footage, nobody is talking about jail. Nobody is talking about criminal charges. The focus appears to be medical. But then something changes. A paramedic prepares to start an IV. Donald becomes agitated. The situation escalates quickly. The official version is that Donald assaulted a deputy. The footage shows a chaotic struggle unfolding inside the ambulance. Commands begin flying from every direction. Put your hands behind your back. Stop moving. Do as you're told. Then one of the most dramatic moments occurs. A taser is deployed. The struggle continues. Donald is restrained. Deputies and paramedics work to secure him on the gurney. The scene becomes so chaotic that family members standing outside can reportedly hear screaming and see the ambulance moving from the outside. And this is where the two stories begin colliding. Because immediately after the confrontation, family members are told something very specific. They are told Donald is going to jail. Not the hospital. Jail. Family members protest. They explain that Donald is experiencing a mental health crisis. They insist he needs treatment. According to the footage, deputies continue telling them that Donald assaulted law enforcement and is going to jail. The family pushes back. The deputies push back harder. Then another controversial moment happens. Family members are ordered to leave. They are threatened with arrest if they remain. Questions are asked. Answers are demanded. But eventually the family is forced away from the scene. And if the story ended there, many people would likely assume the matter was settled. But the footage keeps rolling. And what happens next may be the most important part of the entire incident. Away from the family, deputies begin discussing what just happened. And suddenly, the conversation sounds very different. One deputy reportedly says Donald does not need to go to jail. Another statement follows. We should have never come out here in the first place. Then another admission. He is not fit for confinement. Those comments immediately create a problem. Because only minutes earlier, family members had been told Donald was going to jail for assaulting law enforcement. Now deputies are discussing whether jail is appropriate at all. The contrast is impossible to ignore. According to the footage, there is growing recognition that Donald is experiencing a crisis. Questions emerge about how to transport him. Questions emerge about whether confinement is appropriate. And eventually, after discussions with supervisors and EMS personnel, Donald is transported to the hospital. Not jail. The hospital. He remains hospitalized for several days. And perhaps the most important fact in the entire case is what happens afterward. Donald is never charged with any crime. No assault charge. No resisting charge. Nothing. That fact alone changes how many viewers interpret everything that happened before, because the justification being presented during the incident appears very different from the outcome that eventually follows. Now let's talk about accountability. According to public reporting, Benton County Sheriff Eric Knox launched an internal investigation after learning about the incident. Several weeks later, disciplinary action was announced. Deputy Jacob Sebron was terminated. Another deputy, Detective Hope Hearn, was placed on administrative suspension. The sheriff later described Hearn as one of his best people who was having a very bad day. That statement sparked criticism, particularly from Donald's family. His daughter responded publicly, arguing that what officials described as a bad day was one of the worst days their family had experienced. And when you watch the footage, it becomes easier to understand why emotions remain so intense. Because this isn't just a debate about force. It's also a debate about judgment, a debate about mental health response, a debate about whether opportunities existed to prevent the situation from escalating. The footage captures deputies expressing frustration about being involved. It captures conflicting statements about jail. It captures disagreements about what should happen next. And it captures a family desperately trying to understand what is happening to someone they love. To be clear, mental health calls are among the most difficult situations first responders face. These encounters are unpredictable. They are dangerous, and they often force split-second decisions. But the reason this story continues attracting attention is because the footage allows the public to compare official explanations against what the camera recorded. That comparison is powerful. The official story says a deputy was assaulted during a difficult encounter. The footage also shows deputies later questioning whether the situation should have unfolded the way it did. The official story says discipline was imposed. The footage helps explain why that discipline occurred. And in the end, the outcome speaks for itself. One deputy lost his job. Another deputy was suspended. Donald was hospitalized. No criminal charges were filed. And the incident remains under scrutiny. For many viewers, the biggest lesson isn't about one deputy or one department. It's about transparency. Because without the footage, most people would never know these conversations happen. Without the footage, the public would never hear the contradictions. Without the footage, the questions might never have been asked. And that is why recordings matter. Not because they tell us what to think, but because they allow us to see for ourselves. The camera doesn't end the debate, but it ensures the debate can happen. And in a case like this, that may be the most important fact of all.